The ocean at night is a place of profound stillness. It is a world where time moves differently, where the rush and noise of day dissolve into something much older, much quieter. The surface of the water reflects the moon, and that reflection trembles gently, always moving, never hurried. The waves rise and fall in their ancient rhythm, the same rhythm they have followed for millions of years, and will follow for millions more. You can imagine yourself here, on this vast expanse of water, beneath a sky filled with stars. The air is cool and soft against your skin. There is no urgency here. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. The ocean asks nothing of you. It simply exists, breathing in its slow way, and you are welcome to rest here, to let yourself be held by this enormous, gentle presence. The moon hangs above the water, casting a path of silver light across the surface. This light does not glare or demand attention. It is soft, almost shy, the way moonlight always is when it touches water. The light shivers and dances with each small movement of the waves, creating patterns that form and dissolve and form again. These patterns have no purpose, no destination. They simply are, and that is enough. The water itself is dark beneath the moonlight, a deep blue-black that suggests endless depth. But here on the surface, the ocean is calm. The waves are small, gentle risings and fallings, like the breathing of someone deep in sleep. You might notice how regular this motion is, how predictable and soothing. Each wave follows the one before. Each wave prepares the way for the next. There is a patience to this movement, a willingness to continue forever without complaint or fatigue. The science of waves is itself a calming thing to consider. Waves are created by wind moving across the water's surface, transferring energy from air to water. But at night, when the wind often grows quiet, the waves that remain are the echoes of earlier winds, sometimes from storms hundreds or thousands of miles away. These waves have traveled vast distances, gradually losing their sharpness, their urgency, becoming softer and more rounded as they move. By the time they reach this quiet place, they are gentle, tired in the best possible way, ready to dissolve peacefully into foam and spray. The form itself is worth considering slowly. When a wave breaks, even a small wave, it creates bubbles. These bubbles are tiny pockets of air surrounded by thin films of water. They catch the moonlight and gleam for a moment before they pop and disappear. The foam looks white even in the darkness because of how light scatters through these countless small bubbles. Each bubble is a temporary thing, existing for only seconds, but new bubbles are always forming, so the foam seems continuous, eternal in its impermanence. You can rest here on the surface, floating perhaps, or simply imagining yourself floating. Your body would be supported by the water, held gently. The ocean is very good at holding things. This is because of a property called buoyancy, which is the upward force that water exerts on objects placed in it. This force exists because water has weight and water weighs more than air. When you float, you displace water, pushing it out of the way, and the water responds by pushing back, gently but firmly, keeping you from sinking. The temperature of the ocean at night is usually cooler than during the day, but not uncomfortably so. Water has what scientists call a high specific heat capacity, which means it takes a lot of energy to change its temperature. All day long, the sun warms the surface of the ocean, and the water absorbs this heat slowly, patiently. At night, when the sun is gone, the water releases this heat back into the air, but it does so gradually, over many hours. So the ocean at night is like a warm blanket that is slowly cooling, but still holds enough warmth to be comfortable, to be welcoming. The sound of the ocean at night is different from the sound during the day. There are fewer distractions, fewer other sounds competing for attention. You can hear the waves more clearly, each one making its soft, rushing whisper as it moves toward shore or simply rises and falls in the open water. This sound is rhythmic, repetitive, like a lullaby that knows only one gentle song and sings it over and over. The human brain responds to rhythmic sounds in a particular way. Predictable, repeated sounds can help slow our heart rate, can help deepen our breathing, can encourage the kind of brain waves associated with rest and sleep. Beneath the surface, just a few inches below, the water is slightly warmer than the air. This is a thin layer where the heat from the day lingers longest. If you were to slip beneath the surface, moving slowly, without splashing, you would pass through this warm layer into slightly cooler water below. The transition is gentle, barely noticeable, but it is there. This layering of temperature is called thermostratification, and it is one of the many quiet structures the ocean creates for itself. The ocean is full of such structures, invisible boundaries and layers that organize the water without anyone needing to plan or build them. These structures emerge from simple physical principles, from the way heat moves and the way salt dissolves and the way gravity pulls denser water downward. There is something deeply peaceful about this, the way the ocean organizes itself, the way it creates order without effort or intention. Salt is dissolved throughout all ocean water, but not in equal amounts everywhere. The average salinity of seawater is about 35 parts per thousand, which means that in every 1,000 grams of seawater, 35 grams are salt, and the rest is water. This salt is not just the table salt you might sprinkle on food. Ocean salt is a mixture of many different minerals, though the most abundant is sodium chloride, the same chemical compound as table salt. But there is also magnesium, calcium, potassium, and traces of many other elements. This salt does several important things. It makes the water denser, heavier, which affects how water moves and circulates through the ocean. It lowers the freezing point of water, which is why ocean water can remain liquid at temperatures below the freezing point of fresh water. And it affects the way light and sound travel through the water, though these effects are subtle, measurable only with careful instruments or over long distances. At night, you cannot see this salt, of course. You cannot see the individual molecules of sodium and chlorine drifting in solution surrounded by molecules of water. But you can know they are there, and there is something comforting about this invisible complexity, this hidden richness in something that appears simple and uniform. The moonlight penetrates only a short distance into the water. Light, as it turns out, does not travel well through water compared to how it travels through air. Water molecules absorb light energy and scatter it, sending it in new directions. Different colors of light are absorbed at different rates. Red light is absorbed first, within just a few meters of the surface. Orange and yellow follow. Green light can penetrate deeper, and blue light deepest of all, which is why the ocean, when you can see it during the day, often appears blue. But at night, with only the moon and stars providing light, these distinctions fade. The moonlight that does enter the water is dim and diffuse. It creates a soft glow near the surface, a gentle illumination that fades to darkness within a few meters. Below that, the ocean is entirely dark, lit only by occasional flashes of bioluminescence, which we will consider gently in due time. You might imagine yourself beginning to descend now slowly, without any sense of urgency or fear. There is no need to hold your breath in this imagining. This is not a real descent, but a mental one, a peaceful visualization that can help quiet the mind. You are sinking gently, as though the water is inviting you deeper, as though gravity is working more gently here than it does on land. As you descend, the sounds from the surface begin to fade. The whisper of wind over water becomes softer, more distant. The slap and splash of waves, already quiet, becomes almost inaudible. New sounds emerge, sounds that are always present in the ocean but are difficult to hear from above. These are the sounds of the ocean itself, the creaks and clicks and low rumbles that fill the underwater world. Water is actually an excellent conductor of sound, much better than air. Sound waves travel through water about 4.5 times faster than they travel through air. This is because water molecules are packed more closely together than air molecules, and sound is essentially a vibration that passes from molecule to molecule. In the denser medium of water, these vibrations can travel more efficiently, more quickly. Many animals in the ocean use sound to navigate, to communicate, to hunt. Whales are perhaps the most famous example, and we will think about them soon, but there are others. Dolphins click and whistle. Fish grunt and croak. Shrimp snap their claws, creating tiny explosive bursts of sound. Even in the darkness of night, the ocean is alive with these sounds, a symphony playing constantly, quietly, in frequencies and patterns that most humans never hear. You are descending through what is called the epipelagic zone, the topmost layer of the ocean. This zone extends from the surface down to a depth of about 200 meters, though the exact boundary is fluid, dependent on how much light penetrates the water at any given time and place. The epipelagic zone is sometimes called the sunlight zone, because it is a part of the ocean where light is strong enough for photosynthesis to occur. But at night, there is no photosynthesis happening. The microscopic plants that drift in the water, phytoplankton, have paused their work. They cannot capture sunlight to create energy, so they rest, waiting for dawn. Some phytoplankton sink slightly at night, descending a few meters as though they too are settling in for sleep. Others remain suspended, held in place by tiny oil droplets or by elaborate shapes that increase their surface area and help them float. Phytoplankton are remarkable organisms, though each individual is far too small to see without a microscope. They are the foundation of almost all life in the ocean. They use the energy from sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into sugars and oxygen, the same process that land plants use. The oxygen they produce is released into the water and eventually into the atmosphere. It is estimated that phytoplankton produce about half of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. Every other breath you take comes from these tiny, drifting organisms. There is something peaceful about imagining these countless small lives, each one floating in the darkness, resting, waiting. They do not worry about the coming dawn. They do not plan or anticipate. They simply exist, responding to the environment in ways that are automatic, built into their biology over millions of years of evolution. Near these phytoplankton, though you cannot see them either, are the zooplankton, tiny animals that drift through the currents. Many zooplankton feed on phytoplankton, and many are themselves food for larger animals. There are tiny crustaceans, larval fish, jellyfish relatives, and many other forms, each adapted to this drifting life. At night, many zooplankton rise toward the surface, engaging in what is called the vertical migration. This migration is one of the largest movements of animals on Earth, though it is almost entirely invisible to humans. Each night, billions upon billions of zooplankton swim upward from the deeper water where they spend the day, rising to feed in the surface waters under cover of darkness. Each dawn, they descend again, moving back down to avoid predators that hunt by sight. This happens every day, all over the world's oceans, a slow, massive circulation of life. The reason this migration happens is straightforward. During the day, the surface waters are bright, and any small animal there is easy for predators to see. By staying deep during the day and rising only at night, zooplankton reduce their risk of being eaten. It is a simple strategy, but effective, refined over countless generations. The migration is timed to the light levels in the water, which means it happens earlier in the evening when the water is murky or the surface is rough, and later when the water is clear and calm. You are sinking past these rising migrants now, though the movement is so slow on both sides that it hardly feels like movement at all. Everything here happens gradually, patiently. The zooplankton drift upward at speeds of tens of meters per hour, no faster. You are imagining yourself sinking at a similar pace, or perhaps even more slowly. There is no rush. The ocean is vast, and there is room for everyone, room for all the time anyone might need. The pressure around you is increasing very gradually as you descend, though you would not notice this in any uncomfortable way in this gentle imagining. Water has weight, and the deeper you go, the more water is above you, pressing down. At the surface, the pressure is the same as atmospheric pressure, the weight of all the air in the atmosphere pressing down. For every 10 meters you descend in the ocean, the pressure increases by about 1 atmosphere. So at 10 meters depth, the pressure is twice what it is at the surface. At 20 meters, 3 times. At 100 meters, 11 times. This sounds dramatic, but for most marine life, it is simply normal. Fish and other ocean animals are adapted to these pressures. Their bodies are mostly made of water, and water is not compressible the way air is, so they do not feel crushed or uncomfortable. Some fish can swim between different depths without any difficulty, adjusting to the changing pressure automatically. Others are adapted to specific depths and cannot survive if they are brought too rapidly to the surface or taken too deep. For now, you are still in relatively shallow water, where the pressure is only slightly greater than at the surface. You can imagine that your body, in this peaceful visualization, is adapting effortlessly, becoming part of the ocean, at home in this quiet realm. The water here is cool, not cold. In tropical regions, the surface water might be quite warm even at night, but in temperate zones, the temperature is moderate, comfortable, like slipping into a bath that has cooled to body temperature. The water feels soft against your skin, or would if this were real. Salt water has a different texture than fresh water, slightly more viscous, slightly more present. As you continue to descend, the light from above becomes dimmer. The moon, which seems so bright on the surface, is now just a faint glow, a suggestion of brightness in the darkness above. Your eyes, were you actually here, would be adjusting to the darkness, but human eyes are not well adapted to these conditions. We are creatures of light and air. But you can imagine seeing anyway, or perhaps you do not need to see. Perhaps you can simply feel the water around you, sense the life nearby, rest in the darkness. There is something profoundly restful about darkness, especially darkness that is safe. In our modern lives, true darkness is rare. There are streetlights and car headlights, phone screens and alarm clocks, all manner of artificial lights pushing back the night. But the ocean at night is dark in an ancient way, the way night has always been for most of Earth's history. This darkness is not frightening. It is peaceful, enveloping, like a soft blanket drawn over the world. In this darkness, some organisms make their own light. Bioluminescence is the production and emission of light by living organisms, and it is extraordinarily common in the ocean, especially in the deeper zones. The light is produced through a chemical reaction, typically involving a molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When these react in the presence of oxygen, light is released. The light from bioluminescence is usually blue or blue-green, because these colors travel farthest in seawater. Red light, as mentioned earlier, is absorbed quickly by water, so there would be little point in an organism producing red light for communication or camouflage. Blue-green light, however, can be seen from some distance, at least by animals whose eyes are adapted to detect it. Many different types of organisms are bioluminescent. There are bacteria that glow, and these bacteria sometimes live in symbiotic relationships with larger animals, providing light in exchange for a safe place to live and nutrients. There are dinoflagellates, single-cell plankton that flush when disturbed, creating the glowing waves and wakes that are sometimes visible at night near shore. There are jellyfish, squid, and fish, including the famous anglerfish that dangled a glowing lure to attract prey. But the anglerfish, dramatic as it is, lives in the very deepest parts of the ocean, far below where you are now. Here in the epipelagic zone at night, the bioluminescence is subtler, gentler. A tiny cobra, disturbed by a larger animal or by your imagined passing, might emit a brief flash of light, a momentary sparkle in the darkness. The flash lasts less than a second, a tiny burst of blue-green light, and then it is gone, leaving only darkness again and the afterimage in your mind. These flashes serve various purposes. Sometimes they startle predators, causing them to hesitate long enough for the prey to escape. Sometimes they attract other predators to the area, creating confusion, a commotion in which the original prey might slip away unnoticed. Sometimes the light is used for communication, especially between potential mates. And sometimes, perhaps, the light has no purpose at all in that particular moment, just a reflexive response to stimuli, a spark in the dark. You might imagine seeing such a flash now, a tiny point of light in the blackness gone almost before it registers. And then another, farther away, and another. They do not illuminate anything, these lights. They are too brief, too small. But they remind you that you are not alone in this vast darkness. There is life here, all around, busy with its own concerns, its own quiet existence. The ocean at night is not silent, as we have noted, but the sounds are different from what you might expect. There is a low, ambient noise, a kind of background hum that is always present. This is partly from the movement of water itself, from currents and eddies, and partly from the collective sounds of countless small organisms. Snapping shrimp, for instance, are extraordinarily loud for their size. They snap their claws to stun prey and to communicate, and their snapping shrimp bed can be loud enough to interfere with sonar. But here, far from shore where most snapping shrimp live, their sounds are quieter, more diffuse. There might be the distant click of a dolphin using echolocation to navigate and hunt. There might be the low, rolling moan of a whale, though you are still too close to the surface to hear the deepest whale songs clearly. These sounds travel long distances through the water, bending and reflecting off layers of different temperature and salinity, sometimes covering hundreds or even thousands of miles. Whales use sound in ways that are hard for humans to fully comprehend. Their songs, especially those of humpback whales, can last for hours and follow complex, structured patterns. These songs change over time, evolving from year to year, and whales in the same region tend to sing similar songs as though they are learning from each other, maintaining a cultural tradition. The purpose of these songs is not entirely clear, though they likely play a role in mating and social bonding. Blue whales and fin whales produce sounds at even lower frequencies below the range of human hearing. These infrasonic calls can travel across entire ocean basins, allowing whales to communicate over vast distances. Imagine that, a whale off the coast of one continent singing a song that is heard by another whale thousands of miles away across an ocean. The patience required for such communication, the willingness to wait for a response that might take hours or days to arrive, is humbling. You are still descending, very slowly, and the water is growing slightly cooler. You are approaching the thermocline, a layer in the ocean where temperature drops more rapidly with depth. In many parts of the ocean, especially in the tropics and subtropics, the sun warms the surface water but does not warm the water much below. This creates a warm surface layer and a colder deep layer with a transition zone between them where the temperature falls quickly. The thermocline can be quite sharp, a boundary you can feel if you are swimming and dive down. It is like passing through an invisible curtain from a warm room into a cooler one. The exact depth of the thermocline varies with location and season. In the tropics, it might be at a depth of 100 meters or more. In temperate regions, it might be shallower, or it might disappear entirely during winter when storms mix the surface water and deeper water together. As you pass through the thermocline, the water becomes noticeably cooler against your imagined skin. It is not unpleasant, just different, more bracing, more awake. But you are deeply relaxed, so even this cooler water feels welcoming, another layer of sensation to experience without judgment or reaction. The salt content of the water can also vary with depth, though the changes are usually smaller than temperature changes. In places where rivers flow into the ocean, the surface water is less salty because of the addition of fresh water. In places where evaporation is high, the surface water can become slightly saltier. And in polar regions, the formation and melting of sea ice can change salinity. When seawater freezes, most of the salt is excluded from the ice, so the remaining liquid water becomes saltier. When the ice melts, it releases fresh water, diluting the salt. These variations in temperature and salinity affect the density of water, and density differences drive many of the ocean's large-scale circulation patterns. Cold, salty water is denser than warm, fresh water, so it sinks. Warm, fresh water is less dense, so it floats. This sinking and rising, combined with the rotation of the Earth and the shapes of the ocean basins, create currents that move water around the globe. The great ocean currents are like rivers within the sea, vast streams of water flowing continuously along more or less fixed paths. The Gulf Stream, for instance, carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico up along the eastern coast of North America and across the Atlantic towards Europe. The Kuroshio current does something similar in the Pacific. There are cold currents too, like the California current and the Humboldt current, which bring cold water from higher latitudes toward the equator along the western coasts of continents. These currents are important for distributing heat around the planet, moderating climate, and transporting nutrients. They are also important for the animals that live in the ocean, because animals often move with the currents or position themselves at the boundaries between different currents where food tends to concentrate. But here, in the open ocean at night, you might not be aware of the current at all. You are drifting with it, moving at the same speed as the water around you, so there is no sense of motion. It is like being in a train that is moving very smoothly, and looking out the window at another train on a parallel track moving at the same speed. There is no feeling of movement, only stillness, only presence. You are deeper now, perhaps 50 meters below the surface, perhaps more. It is difficult to say exactly, because in this peaceful imagining, precise measurements do not matter. What matters is the sensation of depth, the awareness that you are suspended in a vast column of water that extends far above you and far, far below. Above you, the surface is a distant memory, a faint brightening in the darkness. Below you, the darkness is complete, or nearly so. This is the beginning of the twilight zone, a mesopelagic zone, which extends from about 200 meters down to about 1,000 meters. In the twilight zone, there is still some light during the day, but it is dim, a perpetual dusk. At night, of course, there is no light at all filtering down from above, only the occasional bioluminescent flash. The twilight zone is one of the largest habitats on the Earth by volume, and it is home to an astonishing number of animals. Fish, squid, jellyfish, shrimp, and many other organisms live here, adapted to the dim light and the cold water. Many of these animals are bioluminescent, and many engage in vertical migration, as mentioned earlier, rising to the surface at night and descending again at dawn. One reason the twilight zone is so populated is that it offers safety. During the day, when predators can see well, the twilight zone provides a refuge, a place where the light is too dim for most visual hunting. At night, these animals can rise to the surface waters where food is more abundant, taking advantage of the darkness for protection. The animals of the twilight zone are often strange in appearance by the standards of surface-dwelling creatures. Many are adapted to see in very low light, with large eyes that can gather as much light as possible. Some fish have eyes that point upward, looking for the silhouettes of prey against the faint light from above. Others have eyes that are extraordinarily sensitive to bioluminescence, able to detect the faintest flash. Many twilight zone fish are small, delicate, with soft bodies and fragile bones. They do not need strong structures to support themselves against gravity the way land animals do, because the water supports them. They drift and swim with minimal effort, conserving energy. Food is not always abundant in the deep ocean, so efficiency is important. Some fish in the twilight zone have silvery, reflective sides. This is a form of camouflage called counter-illumination. When predators look up from below, they see the silvery fish against the dim light from above, but the silver reflects that light, matching the background and making the fish hard to see. Some fish take this a step further and have bioluminescent organs on their bellies that emit light at just the right intensity to match the light coming from above, effectively erasing their silhouette. This is a form of invisibility, not through magic but through physics and biology, through the careful management of light. The fish must constantly adjust the intensity of their bioluminescence to match the changing light levels as they move up and down in the water column. It is a delicate, continuous process, automatic and unconscious. You can imagine yourself having a similar adaptation in this gentle visualization, becoming part of the background, invisible and safe, just another part of the ocean, no different from the water itself. There is comfort in this, in the idea of dissolving boundaries, of becoming one with the environment, of resting so completely that there is no separation between self and surroundings. The pressure at this depth is several times greater than at the surface, but still not crushing, not uncomfortable. The human body, as mentioned, is mostly water, and water is incompressible. The main challenge with pressure for humans diving deep is the air in our lungs and other gas spaces. Air compresses under pressure, which can cause problems. But in this imagining, you have no need to breathe there. You are suspended in the water, perhaps breathing the water like a fish, perhaps not breathing at all because this is only a visualization, a mental space where the usual rules do not fully apply. Many deep-sea animals have no gas spaces in their bodies at all. They have no swim bladders, the gas-filled organs that help many shallow water fish control their buoyancy. Instead, they rely on other methods to remain neutrally buoyant, such as having large amounts of low-density oils or fats in their tissues. These substances are less dense than water, providing lift without the need for compressible gases. The water here tastes different, if water can be said to have taste. It is saltier, and it contains dissolved minerals and organic compounds, the products of life and death and decay. When organisms die in the ocean, they begin to sink, and as they sink, they are consumed by bacteria and other decomposers. This releases nutrients back into the water, nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that are essential for life. Most of this decomposition happens in the deeper parts of the ocean, so the deep water is rich in nutrients. Surface water, by contrast, is often nutrient poor because the phytoplankton and other organisms have used up the available nutrient. This is why areas where deep water rises to the surface, a process called upwelling, are so productive. The nutrient-rich deep water fuels blooms of phytoplankton, which in turn support large populations of zooplankton, fish, and other animals. But here, far from any upwelling zone, the water is quiet, stable, and changing. The nutrients dissolved in the water are not being used at the moment. They are simply present, waiting patient as the ocean itself. You are sinking deeper still, and the temperature continues to drop slowly. The water is now quite cool, not freezing but chill, perhaps 5 degrees Celsius, perhaps a bit warmer. In the deep ocean, temperatures are remarkably uniform, hovering just a few degrees above freezing no matter where you are in the world. The cold comes from the polar regions, where cold, dense water sinks and then spreads across the ocean floor, slowly filling the deep basins with frigid water. This cold water can take hundreds or even thousands of years to return to the surface. The ocean's circulation is slow at these depths, driven by subtle differences in temperature and salinity rather than by wind and waves. This deep circulation is sometimes called the global conveyor belt or thermal line circulation. It is a vast, slow-motion river that flows through all the world's oceans, connecting them into a single system. Water sinks in the North Atlantic and near Antarctica, forming deep water masses that spread throughout the ocean. These deep waters eventually rise to the surface in other regions, completing the cycle. The entire cycle takes roughly 1,000 years from start to finish. A molecule of water that sank in the North Atlantic during the Middle Ages might only now be returning to the surface in the Pacific. There is something deeply coming about this time scale, this slowness. Our lives are short, measured in decades, and within those decades, we often feel rush, as though there is never enough time. But the ocean operates on a different scale entirely. 1,000 years is nothing to the ocean. It has all the time in the world. You have all the time in the world as well, at least for now, in this moment. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to accomplish. You can simply continue sinking slowly, peacefully, deeper and deeper into the quiet embrace of the ocean. The darkness is now absolute. Even the faintest suggestion of light from the surface is gone. You are below the photic zone entirely, in a realm where no sunlight ever penetrates. During the day, this would still be true. The sun could be shining brightly on the surface, and down here it would still be night, eternal and unchanging. Yet there is light here of a kind. The bioluminescent flashes are more common at this depth. A jellyfish drifts past, its bell glowing softly with a blue-green light. It does not flash suddenly like the copepods. Instead, it glows steadily, perhaps to attract prey, perhaps to communicate with others of its kind. The light is dim, barely enough to see by, but in the absolute darkness, even a faint glow is startling, beautiful. Another light appears farther away, moving slowly. It might be a fish with bioluminescent organs along its sides, or a squid, or some other creature. The light does not reveal the creature itself, only its presence, its passage through the water. Then the light is gone, and the darkness returns patient and complete. Some deep-sea fish have light organs near their eyes, like headlights. They can turn these lights on and off, using them to illuminate prey or to signal to others. The light is usually red, which is unusual in the deep sea. Most animals here cannot see red light, so a fish with a red headlight can see without being seen, hunting invisibly in the darkness. This is a predator's adaptation, but there is nothing frightening about it in this peaceful imagining. The fish is simply living, simply being what it is, following instincts and behaviors shaped by millions of years of evolution. It does not hunt out of cruelty or malice. It hunts to survive, to gather the energy it needs to continue existing. And when it dies, its body will sink and feed other organisms, returning its borrowed energy to the ocean. Everything in the ocean is connected in this way through cycles of eating and being eaten, growing and dying, sinking and rising. Energy flows from the sun to the phytoplankton to the zooplankton to the fish to the larger predators, and then, when death comes, back down into the depths where bacteria and other decomposers break down the complex molecules of life into simpler compounds that can be used again. This is not sad. It is simply how the ocean works, how all ecosystems work. There is a kind of immortality in it, not of individuals but of matter and energy, endlessly cycling, never created or destroyed but only changed from one form to another. You are very deep now, perhaps 300 meters, perhaps 400. It is hard to say. Depth loses its meaning when you cannot see, when there are no reference points, only the darkness and the cold and the soft, even pressure of the water surrounding you. The animals at this depth are adapted to withstand far greater pressures than this. Some fish live at depths of several thousand meters, where the pressure is hundreds of times greater than at the surface. Their bodies are built to handle this, their cellular structures reinforced, their enzymes and proteins adapted to function under extreme pressure. There is a particular enzyme, actually many enzymes, that deep-sea organisms use, and these enzymes are shaped differently from the enzymes in surface-dwelling organisms. Pressure can distort the shape of molecules, and since enzymes must have very specific shapes to function properly, this could be a problem. But deep-sea enzymes have evolved shapes that, under high pressure, become the right shape, the functional shape. At low pressure, these enzymes do not work well, which is why deep-sea fish cannot survive if brought too quickly to the surface. This is a reminder that life is extraordinarily adaptable, able to find ways to thrive in environments that seem hostile or impossible. The deep ocean is cold, dark, and under immense pressure, yet it is full of life, teeming with organisms that are perfectly at home there, that could not survive anywhere else. You can rest in this knowledge, in the awareness that adaptation is possible, that life finds a way, that there is resilience built into the very fabric of existence. You do not need to be perfect or invulnerable. You only need to be yourself, adapted to your own environment, comfortable in your own depths. The ocean around you is not empty, though it might seem that way in the darkness. There are animals nearby, though not crowded. The density of life in the deep sea is lower than at the surface because food is scarce. But the ocean is so vast that even a low density of life means countless individuals, countless lives being lived in the quiet and the dark. A deep-sea squid might be hovering somewhere nearby, its tentacles spread wide to detect the vibrations of prey. Squid are intelligent, curious creatures with complex nervous systems and large brains for their body size. This squid is hunting, waiting patiently for something small to swim within reach. When prey is detected, the squid will strike, extending its feeding tentacles in a blur of motion too fast to see, grabbing the prey and pulling it toward its beak. But all of this happens quietly, without drama. The prey is caught or it escapes. The squid eats or it continues waiting. There is no narration, no commentary, only the simple fact of survival, of existence continuing moment by moment. Nearby, perhaps, is a shrimp, transparent and delicate, its eyes large and dark. The shrimp is also hunting, or perhaps scavenging, picking out bits of organic matter that drift down from above. This constant rain of organic particles, called marine snow, is one of the main sources of food for deep-sea animals. Marine snow is made up of dead plankton, fecal pellets, jet exoskeletons, and other bits of organic matter that clump together and sink. The particles of marine snow are small, often just millimeters across, but they are numerous, and they fall constantly day and night, a slow, steady rain that has been falling for as long as there has been life in the ocean. The particles fall slowly, drifting in the currents, taking weeks or months to settle from the surface to the abyssal plains thousands of meters below. As they fall, the particles are eaten by bacteria and zooplankton, which reduce their size and change their composition. By the time marine snow reaches the deepest parts of the ocean, much of its nutritional value has been extracted. But even so, it is food, and in the deep sea, any food is valuable. You might imagine particles of marine snow drifting past you now, small pale flecks in the darkness, visible only if you look closely, if you are still and patient. They fall softly, soundlessly, each one carrying a tiny amount of energy from the sunlit surface down into the depths. Some animals actively swim up to higher zones at night to feed, then return to the depths during the day, as we have discussed. But others remain at depth all the time, relying entirely on marine snow and the occasional larger food fall, such as the carcass of a whale or large fish sinking from above. When a whale dies and sinks, its carcass becomes an oasis in the deep sea, a sudden abundance of food in a place where food is usually scarce. The carcass is quickly found by scavengers, sharks and hagfish and crabs, which tear into the flesh, eating their fill. This feeding frenzy might last for weeks or months, depending on the size of the carcass and the number of scavengers. Eventually, all the soft tissue is consumed, and only the skeleton remains. But even the skeleton is a resource. Specialized bacteria colonize the bones, breaking down the fats and oils inside. These bacteria form the base of a unique ecosystem, supporting worms, clams, and other organisms that live nowhere else. This ecosystem can persist for years or even decades, long after the whale itself has ceased to exist as a recognizable entity. There is a word for these whaleful communities, though it is not a word you need to remember. What matters is the idea, the concept that death in one form is life in another, that nothing is wasted, that the ocean is endlessly efficient, endlessly cycling matter and energy. You are continuing your slow descent, drifting deeper into the mesopelagic zone. The water here is uniformly cold, around 4 degrees Celsius, and the pressure is now many times greater than at the surface. If you could somehow measure it, you would find the pressure at this depth, perhaps 500 meters now, is about 50 times atmospheric pressure. But you do not need to measure it. You only need to feel safe, supported, held by the water and by the darkness. The bioluminescent flashes continue, sporadic and brief. A flash here, a flash there, like stars in the night sky, except these stars are alive, each one a small organism going about its business, creating light for reasons of its own. There is a type of fish at this depth called a lanternfish, named for the rows of bioluminescent organs along its belly and sides. Lanternfish are small, typically just a few centimeters long, but they are extraordinarily abundant. It is estimated that lanternfish make up more than half the biomass of all fish in the open ocean. They are a crucial link in the ocean's food web, eating zooplankton and being eaten in turn by larger fish, squid, and marine mammals. During the day, lanternfish stay deep in the mesopelagic zone, where the dim light and cold water provide protection. At night, they rise toward the surface, sometimes traveling several hundred meters vertically in the course of a few hours. This is the ideal vertical migration we have spoken of, and lanternfish are among its most dedicated practitioners. Right now, at night, many lanternfish are above you, feeding near the surface. But some remain at depth, and you might sense one now, a small presence in the darkness, its bioluminescent organs glowing faintly. The light is arranged in a pattern unique to its species, a kind of identification code that helps lanternfish recognize their own kind in the darkness. The lanternfish does not pay you any attention. It has no concept of you, no awareness of this visualization. It is simply living, simply being a lanternfish, doing what lanternfish do. And that is enough. There is a purity to this, a simplicity. The lanternfish does not wonder about its purpose or worry about the future. It exists in the present, always and only in the present. You can rest in the present as well, in this moment, in this deep, quiet place. There is no past pulling at you, no future demanding anything. There is only now, only this, the gentle pressure of the water, the cool, the darkness, the occasional flash of light. The ocean is patient. It has been here for billions of years and will be here for billions more, long after humanity is gone, long after all the civilizations and cities and concerns that seem so important have faded away. The ocean does not hurry. It does not need to. It simply is vast and deep and calm. You are approaching the boundary between the mesopelagic zone and the next zone down, the bathypelagic zone or midnight zone. This boundary is gradual, not sharp. There is no line drawn in the water. But somewhere around 1,000 meters depth, the character of the ocean changes subtly. The midnight zone extends from about 1,000 meters down to about 4,000 meters. Here, the temperature is even colder, hovering just above freezing, and the pressure is immense, equivalent to 100 or more atmospheres. There is no sunlight, not even the faintest trace. There never has been and never will be, except perhaps briefly when an atomic submarine passes through with its lights on, or a research submersible descends to explore. The animals here are even more sparse than in the twilight zone, even more adapted to scarcity. Many are small, with large mouths and expandable stomachs, able to swallow prey larger than themselves if the opportunity arises. Food is so rare at this depth that animals cannot afford to be choosy. If something edible appears, they must take advantage of it, even if it means eating a meal that will sustain them for weeks or months. Some fish at this depth have evolved into ambushed predators hanging motionless in the water with their mouths open, waiting for something to swim in. Their teeth angled inward, making it difficult for prey to escape once caught. They do not waste energy chasing prey. They simply wait, conserving every bit of energy, as patient as the ocean itself. One such fish is the gulper eel, also called the pelican eel, which has an enormous mouth and a flexible, descensible stomach. The gulper eel looks strange, almost absurd, with its tiny eyes and huge gaping mouth, but this shape is perfectly suited to its environment. It drifts through the water with its mouth open, and when small fish or crustaceans swim into the mouth, it closes, trapping the prey inside. Another fish, the viperfish, has long, needle-like teeth that are too large to fit inside its mouth. Their teeth overlap when the mouth is closed, creating a cage-like structure. The viperfish uses bioluminescent organs along its body to attract prey, lowering them close before striking with sudden, startling speed. But then it returns to stillness, waiting, to the deep, patient darkness. These fish are not monsters, despite their appearance. They are simply animals adapted to an extreme environment, doing their best to survive. There is no malice in them, no desire to frighten. They are beautiful in their own way, beautifully adapted, perfectly suited to the midnight zone. You are sinking into the zone now, deeper and deeper, and the pressure is truly immense, though you do not feel it as discomfort. You are part of the ocean now, in this gentle visualization, and the pressure is just another aspect of existence, no more threatening than the air pressure on land. The darkness is absolute and changing. Your eyes, where they realize, would be useless here. Even the most sensitive eyes cannot see without light. But you do not need to see. You can feel the water, the cold, the pressure. You can sense the presence of other beings, not through sight, but through some deeper awareness, some connection that transcends the usual senses. Sound still travels here, perhaps more clearly than anywhere else in the ocean. In the absence of wind and waves, the water is extraordinarily quiet, and sounds can travel for vast distances without being distorted or absorbed. The low-frequency calls of whales produced at the surface or in the twilight zone pass through the zone on their way to distant parts of the ocean. The clicks of hunting sperm whales, diving deep to hunt giant squid, echo through the darkness. Sperm whales are the deepest diving mammals, capable of reaching depths of 2,000 meters or more. They hunt squid at these depths, using echolocation to find prey in the darkness. The whales produce loud clicks, pulses of sound that travel through the water and bounce off objects. By listening to the echoes, the whales can determine the size, shape, and location of potential prey. The clicks are loud, among the loudest sounds produced by any animal. They can be felt as much as heard, a physical vibration in the water. Yet even these powerful sounds fade eventually, absorbed by the water, scattered by particles and boundaries, until they are gone, leaving only silence again. A sperm whale might be passing through this zone right now, descending toward the deeper waters where the giant squid live. The whale is holding its breath, its heart rate slowed to conserve oxygen, its body adapted to withstand the crushing pressure. It will stay down for an hour or more, hunting in the darkness before returning to the surface to breathe. The giant squid the whale hunts are elusive, mysterious creatures. Very few have been seen alive. Most of what we know about them comes from dead specimens washed ashore or found in the stomachs of whales. These squid can grow to enormous size, with bodies several meters long and tentacles extending even farther. They have the largest eyes of any animal, dinner plate-sized eyes that can detect the faintest glimmers of bioluminescent light. The squid and the whale are locked in an ancient struggle, predator and prey, each adapted to hunt or evade the other. The squid has sharp beaks and powerful tentacles lined with suckers and hooks. The whales often bear scars from these struggles, circular marks on their skin where squid tentacles have gripped them. But the whales are larger, stronger, and usually the whale wins. This is not a story of good and evil. This is simply the ocean, simply life finding ways to continue, energy passing from one organism to another, the endless cycle turning and turning. You are very deep now, perhaps 1,200 meters, perhaps more. It is difficult to judge. The ocean is so vast, and you are so small within it, a single point of consciousness drifting slowly downward through the dark water. There are fish here that never see each other, that live their entire lives in solitude, encountering others of their kind only rarely, perhaps only once or twice in a lifetime for mating. These encounters are facilitated by bioluminescence, by chemical signals released into the water, by sounds. The fish send out signals hoping for a response, waiting in the darkness for an answer that may never come. Some deep-sea anglerfish have evolved a solution to this problem. The males are tiny, much smaller than the females, and when a male finds a female, he bites onto her body and fuses with her, becoming a permanent parasite. He provides sperm, and she provides everything else, nutrients and energy, and a place to live. The male loses his eyes, his digestive system, most of his organs, becoming little more than a sperm-producing appendage attached to the female. This sounds grotesque, perhaps, but it is an elegant solution to the problem of finding a mate in a vast, dark ocean. The male no longer needs to search. He has found what he was looking for and can remain there for the rest of his life. Nature does not judge these arrangements. Nature only asks what works, what allows organisms to survive and reproduce. And this works for the anglerfish in the deep, quiet midnight zone. You can continue to rest, to sink, to let yourself be held by the water. There is no judgment here either, no expectation. The ocean accepts you as you are, just another particle drifting in the darkness, no different from the marine snow or the jellies of the fish. The cold is intense now, just a few degrees above freezing. At this temperature, chemical reactions slow down, metabolism slows down. The fish here live slower lives than their surface dwelling relatives, growing more slowly, living longer, reproducing less frequently. Everything is slowed, stretched out, as though time itself moves differently at this depth. And perhaps it does. Time, after all, is not absolute. It is experienced differently by different organisms, by different systems. A mayfly lies for a day and experiences that day as a full lifetime. A bristlecone pine lives for thousands of years, each year a small increment in a vastly longer existence. The ocean, in a sense, is timeless, unchanging on human timescales, so ancient and so enduring that our brief lives are like the flicker of bioluminescence, a momentary spark in the eternal dark. You do not need to understand this fully. You only need to rest in it to feel the slow movement of time, the patience of the deep ocean, the willingness to simply be without hurry or urgency. There are features on the seafloor far below you, though you cannot see them. Mountains and valleys, plains and trenches, landscapes as varied as any on land but hidden beneath miles of water. These underwater mountains, called seamounts, rise from the ocean floor, sometimes reaching close to the surface, sometimes staying deep. Seamounts create unusual conditions in the ocean. Currents flowing over a seamount are deflected upward, bringing deep, nutrient-rich water toward the surface in a localized upwelling. This makes seamounts hotspots of life, places where fish and other animals congregate. Commercial fishing vessels often target seamounts for this reason, though this can be destructive, damaging the unique ecosystems that develop there. But you're not near a seamount. You're in the open ocean, far from any topographic feature, suspended in a water column with thousands of meters of water below you and 1,000 meters or more above. You are in the middle of the ocean, in every sense, in the middle of the vertical column and far from any shore. The isolation is complete, and it is peaceful. There are no demands here, no obligations. You are free to simply exist, to float, to drift, to rest. The water here is old. It has been at depth for centuries, perhaps longer, slowly moving as part of the thermohaline circulation but not yet returned to the surface. It carries with it dissolved minerals, nutrients, the chemical signatures of its long journey. It is cool because it sank in the polar regions where surface water freezes. It is salty because when seawater freezes, salt is excluded from the ice. This water will eventually rise to the surface again, somewhere in the Pacific or Indian Ocean, completing its long circuit. It will be warmed by the sun, perhaps evaporate and fall as rain, perhaps be taken up by phytoplankton and incorporated into their cells. But that is many centuries in the future. For now, the water is here, surrounding you, patient and cold and still. You might imagine that you could stay here forever, drifting in this zone, neither rising nor sinking, simply resting in the eternal night. There would be a kind of peace in that, a release from the need to go anywhere or do anything. But you can also continue descending, exploring deeper zones, quieter zones if you wish. The ocean is deep, and there is always more depth to discover. Below the midnight zone is the abyssal zone, extending from about 4,000 meters down to 6,000 meters. The abyssal zone covers more than half the Earth's surface, making it the largest habitat on the planet. Yet it is one of the least explored and least understood. Humans have visited the deepest parts of the ocean only a handful of times, spending only minutes or hours there before returning to the surface. The pressure in the abyssal zone is staggering, hundreds of atmospheres, enough to crush most submarines. The temperature is just above freezing, and the darkness is complete. No sunlight has ever reached here, not in all the billions of years the ocean has existed. Yet there is life here, sparse but present. There are sea cucumbers slowly creeping across the muddy seafloor, filter feeding on the organic particles that settle from above. There are brittle stars and amphipods, bacteria and archaea, all adapted to this extreme environment. Some of the bacteria here are chemosynthetic, meaning they create energy from chemical reactions rather than from sunlight. These bacteria are often found near hydrothermal vents, which we will consider gently soon. But even away from vents, in the open abyssal plains, there are bacteria that can extract energy from the chemical bonds in compounds like hydrogen sulfide and methane. These bacteria are primary producers, like phytoplankton at the surface, but they do not need sunlight. They are the base of a food web that exists entirely independently of the sun, a reminder that life is adaptable, that it can find ways to exist in the most unlikely places. You are sinking toward this zone now, deeper and deeper, the pressure increasing with every meter. The water is so cooled now that it is almost at the temperature of maximum density for seawater, which is around 4 degrees Celsius at these pressures. Below this temperature, seawater becomes slightly less dense again, a quirk of how water molecules interact. But you do not need to think about molecular interactions. You can simply rest in the cold. Let it soothe you, let it slow your thoughts, your breathing, your sense of time. Time is very slow here. A sea cucumber might move a few meters in a day, grazing on the sediment, extracting the organic particles mixed in with the mud. It has been doing this for weeks, months, perhaps years, following a simple pattern, moving, feeding, moving again. It has no awareness of time passing, no concept of past or future. It exists only in the present, only in the act of feeding, of moving, of being. You can be like the sea cucumber, simple, focused, present. You do not need to think about tomorrow or yesterday. You can let those concerns dissolve, let them sink away into the depths below you, leaving only the present moment, only the sensation of being here, now, in the cold and the dark and the quiet. The sediment on the abyssal seafloor is soft, fine-grained, made up of tiny particles that have settled from above over millions of years. In some places, the sediment is hundreds of meters thick, layer upon layer of ancient marine snow, compressed by the weight of the water and more sediment above. Buried in this sediment are the remains of countless organisms, shells and skeletons and organic matter, slowly being transformed by pressure and time into rock. Limestone and chalk are formed this way from the accumulated shells of tiny marine organisms. The white cliffs of Dover, for instance, are made of the shells of coccolithophores, single-celled algae that lived in the ocean millions of years ago. The seafloor is also marked by the tracks and burrows of animals, traces of their passage preserved in the soft sediment. These trace fossils, as they are called, can reveal much about the behavior of ancient animals, how they moved and fed and lived. But the traces of modern animals are ephemeral, soon covered by new sediment erased by the slow rain of marine snow. You are approaching the seafloor now, or at least getting close. The water here is perhaps 5,000 meters deep. The seafloor is still far below, but you are in the abyssal zone, surrounded by the deep, cold water. There are strange sounds here, occasional and unexpected. The creak and groan of the earth's crust settling, the rumble of a distant underwater earthquake, the snap of sediment shifting on a slope. These sounds are rare, but they travel far, carried by the water, audible across hundreds of kilometers. You might hear such a sound now, a low rumble, so low that it is almost below the range of hearing, felt more than heard. It is distant, unthreatening, just another reminder that the earth is alive, that the seafloor is not static but slowly moving, shifting, constantly being created and destroyed. The seafloor itself is part of the earth's crust, but not the old, stable crust of the continent. The ocean floor is young, geologically speaking, constantly being created at mid-ocean ridges and destroyed at subduction zones. The oldest ocean floor is only about 200 million years old, much younger than the continents, which can be billions of years old. At mid-ocean ridges, magma rises from the Earth's mantle, creating new crust as it cools and solidifies. This process pushes the existing seafloor outward on either side of the ridge. A slow, steady movement called seafloor spreading. The movement is only a few centimeters per year, about the rate your fingernails grow, but over millions of years, it adds up, creating entire ocean basins. Where the ocean floor meets the continents, it is pulled back down into the mantle and subduction zones, recycled into the deep earth. This process creates deep ocean trenches, the deepest places in the ocean, and also causes earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, though these are far away from where you are now. You are resting in the middle of an ocean basin, an old seafloor that is slowly moving towards a distant subduction zone. But this movement is imperceptible, invisible, too slow to notice. You can simply rest, knowing that you are part of this vast system, this low circulation of rock and water and life. The abyssal plains are some of the flattest places on Earth, vast expanses of seafloor with almost no variation in depth. They are covered with the soft sediment, which hides the rugged volcanic terrain beneath. The plains stretch for thousands of kilometers, broken only occasionally by seamounts or abyssal hills. It is easy to imagine the abyssal plains as deserts, lifeless and barren, but this is not accurate. There is life here, adapted to the cold and the dark and the pressure. The density of life is low, much lower than at the surface, but it is not zero. Every square meter of seafloor is home to bacteria, to tiny worms and crustaceans, to the occasional sea cucumber or brittle star. These organisms live slow, quiet lives, their metabolisms tuned to the cold water and the scarcity of food. They may live for decades or even centuries, growing slowly, reproducing readily. A sea cucumber might live for 100 years or more, grazing on the same patch of seafloor, moving only slightly, changing almost imperceptibly. There is something peaceful about this slowness, this patience. The animals of the abyss do not rush. They cannot afford to. Energy is precious, and they conserve it, living as efficiently as possible. You can learn from this, can let yourself slow it down, can rest in the knowledge that there is no need to hurry, that life can be lived at many different paces, and the slowest pace is not wrong, is not a failure, is simply different. The water here is so still that it seems solid, almost as though you are suspended in glass rather than liquid. But it is moving, very slowly, part of the deep circulation we have discussed. The movement is so slow that it would take centuries to measure with any confidence, but it is there, a current flowing through the abyss, connecting this place to the rest of the ocean. Somewhere nearby, though you cannot see it, there might be a hydrothermal vent, a place where hot water escapes from cracks in the seafloor. These vents are created at mid-ocean ridges, where magma is close to the surface and heats the seawater that percolates through the crust. The heated water, now rich in dissolved minerals, rises back up and flows out of the vent into the cold ocean. The water from hydrothermal vents can be extremely hot, sometimes over 300 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. But the pressure at these depths is so great that the water does not boil. It remains liquid though superheated, and it mixes with the cold seawater, creating plumes of warm, mineral-rich water that rise above the seafloor. Around these vents, unique ecosystems develop based on chemosynthetic bacteria as we mentioned earlier. These bacteria can use the chemical energy in the vent fluids to create organic compounds, and they form the base of a food web that includes tube worms, clams, mussels, shrimp, and crabs. These animals are found nowhere else, adapted specifically to life around hydrothermal vents. The tube worms are particularly remarkable. They can grow to several meters long, and they have no mouth, no digestive system. Instead, they have a specialized organ filled with chemosynthetic bacteria. The worms absorb hydrogen sulfide from the vent water and oxygen from the seawater, and they provide these to the bacteria, which use them to produce organic compounds. The worms then absorb these compounds and use them for energy. This is a symbiotic relationship, a partnership between two very different organisms, each providing something the other needs. The bacteria get a safe place to live and a steady supply of the chemicals they need. The worms get food without needing to hunt or forage. Hydrothermal vents are not eternal. They last for decades or perhaps centuries before the magma source moves or the cracks seal up. When a vent dies, the ecosystem around it dies as well, or rather, it disperses, the animals drifting with the currents in search of new vents. The larvae of vent organisms can survive in the water column for weeks or months, drifting with the deep currents until they encounter another vent. This is a precarious existence, dependent on finding new vents before food runs out. But the strategy works, has worked for millions of years, and vents around the world are connected by these drifting larvae, maintaining genetic diversity across vast distances. You are not a vent, but you can imagine one. Can picture the strange animals clustered around the hot water, the plumes of minerals rising into the cold ocean, the bacteria glowing faintly in the darkness. It is a reminder that even in the deepest, coldest, darkest parts of the ocean, life finds a way. The ocean at this depth feels eternal, unchanging. The cold, the pressure, the darkness, all have been the same for millions of years and will remain the same for millions more. Surface conditions may change, temperatures may rise or fall, ice ages may come and go, but down here nothing changes. This is a stable environment, predictable, constant. There is comfort in this stability, in the knowledge that some things do not change, that there are places of permanence in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain. The deep ocean is such a place, a refuge from change, a sanctuary of stillness. You can rest here, in this still place, for as long as you need. There is no pressure to move, no need to rise to the surface. You can simply be, suspended in the water, held by the darkness and the cold and the deep, profound silence. The silence is not complete, as we have noted. There are sounds occasional and faint, but they do not disturb the silence. They are part of it, like the ticking of a clock in a quiet room, a reminder of time passing but not a disruption of peace. The ocean breathes in its way. Not in the sense of inhaling and exhaling air, but in the sense of moving, circulating, exchanging gases for the atmosphere. At the surface, oxygen from the air dissolves into the water, and carbon dioxide from the water escapes into the air. This exchange is vital for life both in the ocean and on land. The oxygen dissolved in surface water is carried down into the depths by sinking water masses, as we have discussed. This brings oxygen to the deep ocean, allowing animals and bacteria to survive there. Without this circulation, the deep ocean would be anoxic, devoid of oxygen, and few organisms could live there. But the circulation continues, slow and steady, and the deep ocean remains oxygenated, habitable. It is a system that has been functioning for millions of years, a system that is both simple and incredibly complex, driven by basic physical principles but giving rise to intricate patterns and structures. You are part of this system now in this visualization, part of the circulation, part of the ocean. You are not separate from it, not an observer but a participant, a drop of water in the vast sea, indistinguishable from any other drop. This dissolution of boundaries, this loss of self in the larger whole, can be deeply restful. When you are the ocean, you do not need to worry about being yourself, about maintaining your identity, about protecting your boundaries. You can simply be, flowing with the currents, rising and sinking with the tides, part of everything and nothing at the same time. The moon, far above the surface, continues to exert its influence. The moon's gravity pulls on the ocean, creating tides, the regular rising and falling of sea level that occurs twice a day in most places. The tides are strongest at the surface, but even here, deep in the abyss, the water is affected, though imperceptibly. Tides are caused by the differential gravitational pull of the moon and, to a lesser extent, the sun. The moon pulls more strongly on the side of the earth facing it, and less strongly on the far side, creating two bulges in the ocean. As the earth rotates, these bulges appear to move around the planet, causing sea level to rise and fall. The timing and magnitude of tides are affected by many factors, including the shape of the ocean basin, the depth of the water, and the alignment of the earth, moon, and sun. When the sun and moon are aligned, during new and full moons, their gravitational pulls reinforce each other, creating high tides and low tides, called spring tides. When they are at right angles during quarter moons, the pulls partially cancel, creating weaker tides called neap tides. Tides also create currents, called tidal currents, which flow back and forth as the water moves. In some places, these currents are strong and can be dangerous. But here, in the deep ocean, the tidal currents are weak, barely noticeable, just another gentle motion in the water. The ocean is full of such motions, from the tiny vibrations of water molecules to the vast circulation of entire ocean basins. There are internal waves that occur at the boundaries between layers of different density, propagating through the interior of the ocean. There are eddies, swirling masses of water that break off from major currents and drift across the ocean. There are gyres, large-scale circular currents that dominate the surface of each ocean basin. All these motions are interconnected, influencing each other, creating a dynamic, ever-changing system. But the changes are slow, usually, and the overall pattern is stable. The ocean has been circulating in more or less the same way for millions of years, and barring major changes in climate or geography, it will continue to circulate in this way for millions more. You are resting in this circulation, part of the pattern, and the pattern is part of you. There is no separation, no division. You are the ocean, and the ocean is you, and in this unity there is peace. The darkness here is not oppressive. It is gentle, embracing, like a soft blanket wrapped around you. You do not need light to feel safe. The darkness is safe, has always been safe. It is the natural state of most of the universe, and life has learned to thrive in it. On land, we fear the dark, perhaps because our eyes are useless in it, perhaps because predators once hunted us at night. But in the ocean, the darkness is different. It is neutral, neither threatening nor comforting, simply present, a fact of existence. The animals here do not fear the dark. They have never known anything else. For them, the darkness is normal, and light would be strange, perhaps even frightening. They are adapted to navigate by sound, by smell, by the electrical fields generated by muscles and nerves, by the faint glow of bioluminescence. They do not need to see in the way we understand seeing. You do not need to see either in this visualization. You can let go of the need to see, the need to understand everything through vision. You can rest in the darkness, trusting that you are safe, that the ocean is holding you, that there is nothing to fear. The ocean is all that it is difficult to comprehend. Water has been on Earth for billions of years, possibly since the planet formed, possibly delivered by comets and asteroids in the early solar system. The exact origin of Earth's water is still debated, but what is certain is that water has been shaping the planet's surface and enabling life for most of Earth's history. The first life on Earth likely arose in the ocean, in shallow water or perhaps near hydrothermal vents where the chemical energy needed for life was abundant. These early organisms were simple, single-celled, but they were the ancestors of all life that exists today, including you. You are made of the ocean in a sense. Your cells are filled with salty water reminiscent of the ancient ocean where life began. Your blood is salty for the same reason, and the concentration of salt in your blood is similar to the concentration in seawater, though not identical. This is your heritage, your connection to the deep past, to the origin of life. You can feel this connection now, in the cold water surrounding you, in the salt dissolved in that water, in the pressure and the darkness and the timeless stillness. You are returning to the source, to the place where life began, and there is a homecoming in this, a sense of belonging. The ocean does not judge. It does not care who you are or what you have done. It accepts everyone equally, holds everyone with the same gentle pressure, the same cool embrace. In the ocean, all are equal, all are simply part of the whole, temporary arrangements of molecules that will eventually dissolve back into the water. This is not depressing. It is freeing. You do not need to be special or important or memorable. You can simply be here, now, in this moment, and that is enough. It has always been enough. The seafloor below you, though still distant, is covered with a thin layer of living bacteria, a microbial mat that processes the organic matter in the sediment. These bacteria are slow-growing, patient, working constantly but imperceptibly, breaking down complex molecules into simpler ones, releasing nutrients back into the water. They have been doing this for billions of years, these bacteria and their ancestors, maintaining the cycles that allow life to continue. They are not glamorous or exciting. They do not migrate or hunt or communicate. They simply exist, doing a small part in the vast system, and their contribution is essential. Everything in the ocean has a role, even the smallest, simplest organisms. There are no insignificant lives, no worthless existences. Every bacterium, every copepod, every fish, every whale contributes to the whole, and the whole would be incomplete without them. You have a role as well, though you do not need to know what it is. You do not need to have a purpose or a plan. Simply existing is enough. Simply being here, now, in this place, is a contribution, a participation in the vast, interconnected web of existence.